everyone, it's Jo here from Time for Tea Designs with another card making tutorial. Today's video has been taken from our Facebook Live, which took place on Thursday the 12th of March. And we used some of our new products, the bamboozled stencil you can see there, our Hooray cover plate die and the Pandamonium party set. So the first step was to cut out our background panel, and we've used this cover plate die, which is A6 in size, and we've used some of our A5 super smooth cardstock to cut out this background panel. So I'm just going to attach that with some washi tape and then pop that through my die cutting machine. And once that's cut out, just remove that washi tape. And this, you can't really see it that well on screen, but you'll be able to see it in the photos at the end of the video. But there is this lovely waved stitched line that is cut out onto your background. So our my next plan was then to create some panels on my background, and I'm just showing here that the stencil has some etched lines that allow you to line that up with your A6 or your A2 size card blank. There are two lines, one that fits an A2 US size card blank and one that fits the UK A6 size card. So I've just lined that up with some washi tape, and then I'm going to take some Heavy Doodle memo tape just to block off the bottom two squares of my grid. I then take one of our beautiful blender brushes and some squeezed lemonade ink and apply my first layer of ink through those squares in the stencil, and then I'm going over the top with a different brush now to apply some of that Twisted Citron Distress ink over the top. So just rubbing that off with my microfiber cloth to make sure that's clean. And then we're going to add some more colour using our bamboozled stencil. So I've lined up my bamboozled stencil over the top of the square grid stencil, and now I'm going to apply some of my Distress Oxide ink. So I'm using two shades. I'm going to use the Crushed Olive and the Forest Moss just to get a little bit of dimension to those bamboo stalks and to the leaves as well. So I've sped this up quite a bit. I did take a bit more time on the live video just to make sure that we got a really nice blend of colours, and we've left some gradient in there so that you can get some feeling of depth and dimension to each of the bamboo stalks. So I'm really pleased with how that came out, and I love the big reveal when we take the stencil away from the cardstock. It just looks really, really crisp and really clean. So now we're going to move on to stamping our little pandas. So because I wasn't quite sure at this stage what we were going to create and how it was going to work out, I've decided to stamp 3 of my panda images and then a bunch of accessories to go with that, so that we can create a little bit of a scene. But you'll see towards the end of the video, I actually need a few more accessories, and I actually stamp and die cut some more of the bamboo stalks to finish off our scene. But for the moment, we're going with the selection that I've made here, and I'm using some of my Memento Tuxedo Black ink to stamp out my images, and using my stamping platform to help me get a nice crisp finish, because it allows me to stamp my images twice and not worry about them not being positioned correctly when I pop that back through. So now my images are all stamped, I can move on to colouring them. And I did use my Copic markers to colour today. We did discuss as part of the Facebook Live, actually, because pandas are black and white, the only colour that's really needed is a little bit of shading so that they look 3D. And also perhaps a little bit of blush to the cheeks. So I'm just showing here that my sunshine is coming from the left-hand side, and so I'm creating more shadow along the right-hand side. And then for the panda at the bottom, I'm imagining my sun is front on, so I'm applying shading from both sides. But one idea that we did have, because there is so little shading required, you could, if you used a different ink type, you could use your Zig brush markers to add some colour, or you could actually use pencils to get some really subtle shading. So really you can use whatever medium you're most comfortable with. Copics just seem to be my go-to colour. But I am looking to experiment into other mediums and do more of those tutorials as part of the Facebook Lives moving forward. So I've just blended out some of that E40 shade. I find that this is a warmer shade than just going in with some of the greys, and I think it is a bit of a more natural colour for critters. And once that's complete, I've added a little bit of blush to the cheeks, and that's really all that was needed for our pandas. So for the little accessories, we've got a little present here that our panda can be holding, and I've used some shades of blue to colour that and to the bottom of our cupcake. And then for the little bow tie, which I do love the addition of a bow tie to a character. I just think it looked really cute. I've just used a couple of the YR shade to the YR14 and the YR15. And then for the sponge on our cupcake, the E13 and E15 was really all that was required to create that sponge-like effect. And then one tip that we did talk about is if you are applying shade to an orange or a red colour, sometimes greys can be a bit harsh and a bit hard to blend. So brown is a good alternative colour to add some shade to those particular colours. And then moving on to my bamboo. Now, bamboo, I've used shades of green, so the YG00, YG03 and YG25. Some really quick and simple colouring here, nothing too difficult to do. That's what makes this set so usable, because if you're not an experienced colourer, then this is an ideal set. The images are small. You really only need one or two colours to create some dimension. And like I say, the pandas really only need a little bit of shading to bring them to life. So now we've coloured all our images, I'm going to use the coordinating dies to cut those out. So just matching up all of my my images with those dies, and then I will attach them all with a little bit of washi tape to make sure that they don't travel once I put them through my die cutting machine. Another favourite moment of mine is when you get to pop out your images from those dies once they've been through the machine. So we just popped each of those out, and I love how they look with that little bit of a white border around the edge. I just think that really finishes the images off and makes them look very crisp and cleanly cut. So that's all of our elements, and now we're ready to do something with them and construct our card. So our first step is to add a sentiment to our background panel. I will be adding a frame to the project a little bit later on, but for the moment I'm just using that to make sure that I'm positioning my sentiment in the right spot underneath our stenciled grid. So I'm using the sentiment, Great Pandamonium, It's Your Birthday, and I'm using some Versamark Onyx Black ink to stamp that, because I do think that creates a really rich black once it's stamped, so it's perfect for stamping your sentiments. And I'm going to use this nesting die, which is brand new, the quilted square nesting die, to create that frame that you saw. So I'd already cut out a couple of pieces using those two centre squares that you see that were missing from the set there. They fit perfectly together to create a frame for 4 of your grids. So This set has been designed to work really well for your 5 by 5 and 6 by 6 size card blanks, so to create your mat and layers for those, but also works perfectly with our masking stencils, as the square dies in there have been sized perfectly to create the right frames or back panels that will work alongside those stencils. So I've cut 4 of these frames using those 2 particular dies, and now I'm going to stick all of those together using some of my Cosmic Shimmer glue. By layering up each of these frames that I've die cut, I'm creating almost a chipboard element for my background. This means that I don't have to worry about trying to find some small enough foam tape or shaker tape to apply this to my card base. I can just use some liquid glue, and that will help me when I come to positioning my little pandas, which I'm just having a little look as to where they might sit, and I do want them to tuck in behind that frame, but I also want elements to pop out in front of it as well. So before I attempt that, I am going to just add some of my accessories to my pandas so that I can stick them straight on. So I've added the little bow tie to one panda, and then just some spots of that liquid glue to their paws so that I can add the cupcake and the little present. So now they're adhered, I can try and pop these guys in place. And my thought was to just add a little bit of glue to the bottom of the panda and sit his feet just below that grid line so that the frame will sit on top of that and he just tucks in behind it. And then for the panda that's going to sit in the top left hand corner, again I've just applied glue to his feet and then curled him up slightly so that his head and his ears will sit above the frame. For the bamboo stalks, again I'm going to use these in opposite corners and attach the bottom portion with a bit of glue and then leave the top to stand proud of the frame. So I've just attached those 2 in the bottom, curled them up a little bit, and then when it came to attaching this particular one, I felt it was dangling a bit too low and it was almost hitting my panda on his head. So I did trim that down a little bit and then reattach it a little bit shorter so that it didn't interfere with my character below. The second one fit just nicely next to it. And then these little extra bits of leaves that we coloured and die cut can just sit on the top of the base of each of each of those bamboo stalks, just to cover that join up a little bit and make it look a little bit more interesting. So now each of those are in place, it comes to attach our frame. So I'm using the liquid glue again, which will allow me to have a little bit of wiggle room and I can maneuver that in place. It's also really great because it does dry clear. So if any of that does happen to come out of the sides, then we know that we can wipe that up and that will dry clear. But ideally, you don't want to put so much on that becomes an issue. So I've managed to just tuck that in behind my panda's ears and those bits of bamboo, and that makes for a really nice frame and draws your eyes into the centre of that card. I've used some of my Cosmic Shimmer liquid glue to attach this panel to my card base, which is an A6 top folding card. And that's pretty much the card complete. We've just added a few little finishing touches. So I've used my Jelly Roll black glaze pen to add a little bit of shine to those noses. So it took a little bit of working to get that ink flowing, but it's a great tool to be able to just add some really subtle shimmer to noses and eyes. It's really useful for as well. My white Jelly Roll pen is great for adding some little bits of highlight. So because the ears and legs are stamped in pure black, The addition of the white highlight, again, just adds a little bit of depth and dimension to those areas. For the present, because it is a gift, it's nice to add a little bit of extra sparkle. So I'm using some of my unicorn stickles to add some shimmer to that gift, and then to the top of my cupcake as well. And we called that our card complete for tonight. So I do hope that you enjoyed today's tutorial and you liked our little pandas there in their bamboo background. If you did like the video, then it'd be great if you could like and subscribe. And we will be back with more videos in the future, so please do look out for those. Thank you so much for watching today, and we'll see you again real soon. Bye bye now.